Jay Bilas with Armen Levack on 104.5 The Team. You're home for New York sports. Jay, thanks for your time today. As you look at the bracket, what's the one game that you've been struggling on, Jay, here in the first round, the one matchup?
I struggle on them all. I don't know. I don't know who can pick games and feel comfortable with it.
Yeah.
It's like any sport. I think it's kind of funny in college basketball. We act like all these games are coin flips, and no other sport has this issue. When the Kansas City Royals go to the World Series and the wild card wins in the Super Bowl in certain years, and but we say there's parity in college basketball, and there's not. There's not parity in any sport. But it's funny. But there's no, in a one-game scenario where you're dealing with a three-point shot and things like that, it would be hard to pick NBA games. It would be hard to pick high school games. It would be hard to pick anything. But any game that, like Butler, Texas is difficult. Utah, Stephen F. Austin is difficult. But I think you saw from some of the games in the first four where BYU had a 17-point lead and lost, and these things are really difficult to pick.
Well, especially when and I heard you talking about this on Mike and Mike earlier this week on 104.5 The Team. Jay Bilas with us. Well, when you're on the selection show and right afterwards, and you're saying, "Yeah, here's my pick," and then do you have that moment where you look back later and go, "Oh, Sunny Beaches, why did I do that?"
Only if they lose.
Yeah, hindsight, right?
But I'm not dumb enough to think that I can pick all these games.
Right.
If we could pick, if people could pick these games, they would go to Vegas and just sit by the pool all day. That's why there are all these buildings up in Vegas, because you can't. It's impossible. And people like a lot of people are drawn to this event because of the lottery aspect to it.
Right.
And, let's not be naive. This event is gigantic because of gambling, not because people like college basketball. So you have people who really enjoy the game that are in anyway, and then you have this gigantic group of people who are involved because of the bracket and the fact that they have money riding on this. And that's great. I think everybody should be on the bandwagon, but I'm not naive. I know these games are gambled on, and I have no problem with gambling. And clearly the rest of the country doesn't have any problem with it either, because we have state-sanctioned lotteries.
Hey, amen. Amen to that. I hear that.
But gambling's a big part of this.
Jay Bilas with Armen Levack. Jay, who's a team that can make the Final Four that would be considered a surprise?
Georgetown can do it. Wichita State can do it. There are a number of, I don't know if you would consider Iowa State a surprise. They're a 3 seed. Oklahoma, I think, is good enough to do it. I wouldn't be surprised if Louisville got there. And then Baylor out of the West I think is good enough to do it.
Wow.
But it depends. It depends if you have. A lot of it depends on what happens with other teams. You could have a bracket that opens up completely if one of the big shots stubs its toe, and that's kind of how a lot of times how these things happen. You can have a situation like '97 where Arizona beats all the number 1 seeds, or they beat a bunch of number 1 seeds, which is really unusual. You're hardly ever going to find that. Usually what happens is a higher seed goes down, and then it opens it up for, like, say, Baylor. A team like Baylor, the highest seed in their bracket gets beat by somebody else, so they're playing a lesser team that's already spent from the victory before, and they wind up getting through because of that.
You just mentioned multiple Big 12 teams. Were they the best conference in the country this year?
Depends how you define it. They had the most. They had the most good teams. That where it had the best depth of good teams, I guess. I tend to go with the team, the most powerful teams as the best conference. So I actually thought the ACC was the best league, but by the numbers, because you had fewer teams and more of them, a higher percentage of them were good. A lot of people thought it was the Big 12, but I don't think any. I don't think Kansas was as good as Virginia or Duke or teams at the top of that league, and it probably wasn't as good. There wasn't anybody in the league as good as Wisconsin, in my judgment. And so it depends on how you define it. Just because a team has, like last year, the SEC had 2 Final Four teams. Well, nobody was saying it was the best league. Actually, a lot of people were bagging on it, but. So you can have, as long as you have strength at the top, and it does well in the tournament, I think it speaks well to the league.
Jay Bilas with Armen and Levack. Levack's out. I'm at Wolves 111 right now. Jay, when we look at tomorrow night, of course, we're here in Albany, New York. You're home for New York sports. You, Albany, going up against Oklahoma. What do you see in that matchup? That's going to be a tough one for the Great Danes, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think all those games are tough. It just depends. I mean, a lot of times what happens when you have a 3-14 game is if the 3 comes in overlooking you're in much better shape. I think when you have a team that's engaged and ready to go, Oklahoma's a better team. I mean, I don't think there's any getting around that. They're better. But that doesn't mean that Albany can't win. And, Sam Raleigh's a good player, and Peter Hooley's had some really good moments this year. It's a team that can score at times, but they're going to have to hang on the backboards, and they're going to have to take care of the ball. That's really the main thing, because Oklahoma's a good defensive team. They're not great. They're good. But when they decide they want to play, they can really play. Their guards are good. They've got a really tough matchup, and Tayshawn Taylor inside that can step away and put the ball on the floor. And Ryan Spangler, who started out at Gonzaga and transferred back to Oklahoma, is a really good rebounder. So they're formidable, but they're not unbeatable. They've lost 10 times, so they can be had.
Beautiful. That's what we're hoping for. Jay Bilas with Armen and Levack. Jay, heard you drop the name Greg Kubek the other day. Of course, Albany's own, went to Shin, the first player to play in 4 Final Fours. It was kind of cool to hear you mention a former Dookie, former Shin guy.
I was an assistant when he was a player. I'm older than Greg.
Gotcha.
Greg's a good friend and really good guy, and he was a heck of a shooter.
Very good stuff. Jay Bilas with Armen and Levack. Hey, did they do the I Hate Christian Leitner 30 for 30? Did they do that right? Did you like that?
Yeah, I thought it was good. I wasn't crazy about the title, but I thought it was good. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I don't know how Christian's mom enjoyed it, but yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Hey, last question, Jay. We have Dick Vitale on our station twice a week throughout the tournament. I have kissed Dick Vitale on the head twice in my life as I used to paint up in the Texas Tech student section. Would you be opposed if a student ever kissed you on the head? Has that ever happened?
It has not happened. Would I be opposed to it? It depends on the student.
That's fair. Jay Bilas of ESPN. Jay, thanks so much for your time, man. I know you're busy.
Thank you. Good to be with you.